will prepare you for depopulation, and that you can brainwash the public to accept it as long as it's done incrementally through different programs that all come together, building the larger structure. Think of Legos. Look at one piece and another piece, 100 pieces of Legos laying out in front of you. You say, that's just a bunch of Legos. But if you've got the map and the instructions, you can build what they're building. And what they're building is a post-human world, taking over the food supply. They're taking over the water supply. They're dissolving the borders. They're making the universities give and secondary education and primary education give you worthless degrees where you just know how to feel sorry for yourself and you know your pronouns. They are hitting every level of the infrastructure. They're hitting savings. They're hitting small businesses. They are rolling out a civilization-ending system where they, through bureaucracy, implode everybody else and consolidate you under their control. So then with a universal basic income, they can dictate every facet of your life and get giant armies of lemmings signed on to follow any order they want.
What I try to do here is to talk a little bit about this big picture, what we have to think about. And I call it actually the octopus. Why? Because this octopus has many different tentacles. And very often we fail to see that all these tentacles are actually connected. Nothing is coincidence. These things, they are all connected. You know, the war, the famine, the energy shortages, the food shortages, the disruptions of the supply lines. All of this is connected. Knowing what are the real names of this agenda. And what I see here is, well, we have the Great Reset. We have the UN Agenda 2030. We are just about in the middle of it, of these two things. And then we have the fourth industrial revolution. It's all digitization of even the human brain.
Head of state came to me and she had chronic issues, health issues that we did manage to correct. And one day she said to me, you know, it's almost time for the great culling to begin. And I said, what? The what? She said, culling, C-U-L-L-I. I know the word, but what are you talking about? She said, the culling of the useless eaters. Now, this was in 2002, and I had never heard the term useless eater. I said, what's a useless eater? She said, not what, my dear, who? I said, okay, who's a useless eater? She said, those people who are consuming our non-renewable resources. So I asked her how many of these useless eaters she was planning on culling. And she said 90%. And I said, 90% of what? And she said, the total world population. She said, the mercantile era, which began in the 14th century with the Hanseatic League in Germany, is coming to an end. We are moving to a neo-feudal era. There will be us, the neo-aristocrats at the top, surrounded by our servants and servitors, and around them our technicians. And that entire short pyramid requires only 10% of the current world population. This woman told me what the plan was. And although it was completely insane, because normal people don't think like this, normal people don't say these things and want these things to happen with equanimity. Yes, we're going to kill 90% of the world's population. And so I went searching, and I discovered that the terms that she had used, including useless eater, were terms of art in Nazi Germany. I also discovered that the Germans had begun their hideous extermination campaign long before World War II. And it was believed that for the good, and this is very important for what we're living through now, for the good and safety and health of the population, it was important to cleanse out, to get rid of those who were a contamination to the society.
Рокфеллера и его ближайший соратник и приятель Чиз Холм стал первым президентом Всемирной организации здравоохранения в 1948 году. Вот его цитата. «Чтобы прийти к мировому правительству, необходимо изгнать из сознания людей их индивидуальность, привязанность к семейным традициям, национальный патриотизм и религиозные догмы, уничтожение понятий истины и лжи, которые являются основой воспитания ребенка, замена веры в опыт старших, то, о чем говорил Никита, рациональным мышлением, вот запоздалые цели, потребные для изменения человеческого поведения». Это меморандум 1948 года. А дальше, 1974 год, меморандум национальной безопасности Соединенных Штатов. Политика в области народонаселения становится весьма важной для соблюдения экономических интересов США. Следует создать социальные и психологические предпосылки для якобы стихийного снижения рождаемости. Мы должны позаботиться о том, чтобы наша деятельность не воспринималась, тогда они еще говорили развивающими странами, как политика развитой страны, направленная против этих стран.
Under control as well, because if you look at it in sheer economic terms, how can you sustain increases in per capita income at a time when you have rising population without rising economic growth? Whereas if you have a declining population, which is what I would aim for, then of course even a stable economic growth situation will give you increases in per capita income. So that's where I stand on that.
Do you have a sense of what the carrying capacity of Britain is, or of the world as a whole? Or?
Well, Britain, I put it at 10 or 15 million. I think that'd be absolutely fine. I mean, that would do us really splendidly. At a limit, 2025, I think it's complete nonsense that we are now confronted with an island, would you believe it, of 70 million people. I wrote a paper, I think it's the only paper the Conservative Party has ever published, and it was published as an old Queen Street paper in June 1972, oddly enough. And it was called Britain Needs a Population Policy.
Origins of eugenics in the US and England, even the origins of what we're being told is this current climate crisis, tracking it back to the Club of Rome and how they decided that they would choose human beings as kind of the cause of the climate crisis. That was decided upon. It was written about in a book. Well, when we see headlines like this in Bloomberg, I think it's time for us to go a little deeper into this conversation. Earth needs fewer people to beat the climate crisis, scientists say. Where is this coming from? How do we still have these headlines going on? One of the people you can really point to is a person named Thomas Malthus. He writes, "The power of population is so superior to the power in the earth to produce subsistence for man that premature death must in some shape or other visit the human race." Why are we doing these deep dives with some guy from the 1700s? Well, because headlines like this, we're seeing these coming back around. The Malthusians are back. Climate activists who worry that the world has too many people are joining ugly tradition. So one of the...
Though each of them takes climate change seriously, every expert I talked to wanted to bring my attention to the same underlying problem.
There are too many human beings using too much too fast.
As a global community, we really have got to start dealing with the issue of population.
Population growth continues to be not the elephant, the herd of elephants in the room.
Can a single species that's come to dominate an entire planet
be smart enough to voluntarily limit its own presence?
Is there any precedence for that in nature?
Wow.
We have to have our abilities to consume reined in, because we're not good at reining them in if there are seemingly unrestrained resources.
Species hit the population wall a lot and then they crash. I mean, that's a common story in biology. If that happens to us, in a way, it's the natural order of things. And I don't think we're going to find a way out of this one. I don't.
As a scientist, what leads you to that conclusion?
Well, because right now, a large percentage of that number is supported by industrial agriculture, which is heavily subsidized by oil, and it's not sustainable. And, you know, and there's no going back. Without seeing some sort of major die-off in population, there's no turning back.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, 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 more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
The chilling announcement was made earlier today by the Secretary General of the UN, who was overseeing the meetings held by world leaders at their emergency summit in Athens.
While we every day bear witness to the catastrophic ecological collapse that is plaguing our planet, we must not forget that this is, above all, a human crisis. The sudden and devastating scarcity of food, water, and resources, once only an issue for our most vulnerable, now spares no one. And it requires a response like none before.
He went on to add that starting tomorrow, all international borders will be closed, and every nation will have 1 year to meet their population reduction goals.
Μια κουλτούρα και βιομηχανία συνθετικών τροφίμων διεισδύει σιγά σιγά στις πτυχές της κοινωνίας, προωθώντας ψεύτικο κρέας, έντομα και εξαιρετικά επεξεργασμένα τρόφιμα. Ωστόσο, ακόμη και αυτές οι νέες βιομηχανικές καινοτομίες δεν αρκούν για να αντικαταστήσουν εύκολα τη μαζική παγκόσμια μείωση των γεωργικών εκμεταλλεύσεων με τον ρυθμό που επιχειρείται. Λίγες εξηγήσεις έχουν νόημα αν δεν εξεταστούν μέσα από το πρίσμα της μείωσης του πληθυσμού, του ελέγχου και της κοινωνικής ενοποίησης με τη χρήση της τροφής ως όπλο. Αυτό δεν είναι κάτι καινούριο. Συνέβη ήδη το 1958 στην Κίνα, όταν ο Μάο Τζετούν κατέλαβε τα αγροκτήματα για να εδραιώσει την εξουσία του. Και ξεκίνησε το μεγάλο άλμα προς τα εμπρός. Ο στόχος ήταν να εξυγχρονιστεί ο γεωργικός τομέας της χώρας χρησιμοποιώντας κομμουνιστικές οικονομικές ιδεολογίες. Ως αποτέλεσμα, το 1959 η παραγωγή δημητριακών της Κίνας μειώθηκε κατακόρυφα. Κατά 15%, το 1960 μειώθηκε άλλο ένα 16% και αυτό προκάλεσε το συνολικό αριθμό πρόωρων θανάτων μεταξύ 1959 και 1961 να κυμανθεί από 18,48 έως 30 εκατομμύρια μέσα σε 2 χρόνια. Ο λοιμός αυτός θα παραμείνει ο χειρότερος στην παγκόσμια ιστορία όσον αφορά τις απώλειες σε ανθρώπινες ζωές.
Another big one, engineered famine. So famine is absolutely being engineered in order to take down much of the population of the Western world. They are shutting down food infrastructure through sabotage operations, burning up the chicken farms, burning down the distribution centers, the meat plants, whatever. And food inflation is all by design. It's shutting down the farms. Why are they at war with the farmers? So they are democidal regimes, and they are hunting us in order to exterminate us. Geoengineering is a weapon of mass destruction. Weather control systems are designed to cause crop failures and, of course, to interdict the supply chain of affordable food. And that's why you're seeing so much crazy weather lately.
Huge change in the mortality rates in developing countries, which then has this effect of reducing population growth. That's this big benefit that then makes everything like education and nutrition a lot easier.
If you slowly annihilate people, you have less people to feed and educate, basically. I want to make it clear here, because people get hoodwinked. It's like, no, but do you see, Del, he's saying he's trying to make kids healthier. Let's be clear. He had, and I think there's a better set of words we should use. He wants less souls on this planet. He wants less children on this planet.
It's heard the ideology that goes way back to the 1700s, and it's peppered throughout to present day of less people on the planet. And then we see headlines for the first time really ever recently like this: America's fertility crash laid bare. Interactive map shows how birth rate has plummeted since 2007, falling up to 1/3 in some states. And you go into this article and it has a map there. And you go to another graph, the number of children born to each woman. In the 1800s there at the first line, it's up to about 7. And then you track it to 2020, you have less than 2. Last year, Japan considers offering even more money to new parents as birth rate crashes. This year, Japan on the verge of societal collapse due to birth rate, Prime Minister says. Poland birth rate found to be the lowest in 30 years. And then if you go to The Economist, it just says global fertility has collapsed with profound economic consequences. These are the headlines that we have to pay attention to. It's a really serious, serious problem.